This is Health UnaBASHed, broadcasting live on Healthcare Now Radio. Health UnaBASHed is where healthcare meets innovation, insight, and impact. We engage top industry minds to explore the future of health and wellness, from visionary thinking to sustainable models, policy reform to frontline delivery, and ultimately the real-world impact on public health. I'm Greg Masters, co-host and executive producer, alongside my partner in conversation, the ever-curious digital health aficionado, author, editor, global thought leader, and industry steward, Gil Bashe. Together, we bring you the people, ideas, and movements reshaping healthcare, not with hype, but with purpose and persistence. On today's episode, Gil sits with Keith Kerman, New York City's Chief Fleet Officer and a leading voice in sustainable urban transportation. A pioneer in fleet sustainability, Keith leads New York City's initiative to transform the nation's largest municipal fleet into a climate-friendly and technologically advanced operation. In this forward-thinking conversation, Keith shares how public sector innovation can drive system-wide change, from reducing carbon emissions to improving air quality, and how cities can be incubators for environmental health leadership. To learn more about New York City's Green Fleet initiatives, visit nyc.gov/DCAS. You can also follow Keith on LinkedIn. Now, with no further delay, Gil, the mic is yours.
Greg, thank you so much for that gracious introduction. And thank you so much for being the executive producer of the program. We're now entering, I think, soon our fourth season. And I think a lot of our success is obviously based on our great guests, like the one we have today. And of course, your mastery as executive producer of Health UnaBASHed. So thank you so very much. I have an exceptional guest today. I met Keith Kerman, at a conference, a summit, dedicated to People and Planet United. A summit that really spoke about global health and purpose. We had not met before. Keith was one of the presenters, and I had the pleasure of meeting him before his session. We spoke for a few moments, and I realized that this individual, his passion for the people of New York City, the great city of New York, really inspired him every day to get up and get going and to improve New York City, improve the air quality, the city environment for all people. Keith really represents the theme of People and Planet United. Rarely have I done this. I don't think in the almost 4 years of the program have I read a piece of a bio. In Keith's situation, I'm going to make exception to that rule, because I think when you hear about this person and you realize what he's achieving from an operational standpoint, from a policy standpoint, from a collaborative standpoint, of working with city employees, some unionized, some not unionized, of getting them to move collaboratively, united together, you'll see an individual who is actually represents some of the best of public service. Now, Keith has told me twice that he has enough years in New York City government to call it a day, to take his full pension. And yet, here he is with us representing New York City and his department because he cares. He cares deeply about his mission. Keith, first of all, welcome to the program. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to share a little bit about your background to set the, set the environment for our conversation. So Keith Kerman is the New York City Chief Fleet Officer and Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. It's a big title. He's going to talk a little bit about what that entails. He has a commitment to environmental stewardship, and you're going to see exactly how that goes. He oversees, actually, the transition of some 28,000 vehicles toward a carbon-neutral future. 28,000 vehicles. That's a big lot. Under Keith's leadership, the city has embraced electric vehicles, renewable fuels, and cutting-edge technologies, setting ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2025. That's this year. We'll find out how he's doing. And achieve an all-electric fleet for most models by 2035, 10 years from now. Keith's visionary approach not only enhances operational efficiency, but also underscores the critical role of sustainable practices in promoting public health and environmental resilience. Keith Kerman is really an exceptional person because he has to understand not just how things sort of work and finance and policy and appreciate both the commissioner's expectations and the mayor's, but he has to be he's an employee of the people of New York City in all five boroughs. He's out there. Now, what you don't see, you'll see in the promotion pictures, is behind Keith is a coat stand with a bright orange and yellow jacket and a yellow helmet. Keith is not one of these people who sits in his office all day. I've learned that actually Keith is out and about almost his entire workday, taking a frontline approach to making sure that the policies are implemented. And then, late at night or very early in the morning, he answers the hundreds and hundreds of emails he receives each day. He is in the game. Keith, welcome to Health Unabashed.
Well, thank you very much, Gil and Greg. Great to be with you. On behalf of Mayor Adams and our Commissioner Louis Molina, I really appreciate the chance to kind of tell our story on fleet sustainability and what we're doing to
Keith, you've had
clean
many
the air of
roles in New York City government through the years. I think you mentioned you've been with the city for 31 years. So you haven't always been, obviously, with the Department of Citywide Administration Services and focusing on transportation. I'm certain you've had other responsibilities. How long have you been responsible, though, for the transition of the citywide fleet?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I will tell you, for 17 years, I worked as the head of citywide operations, most of that time, the chief and then commissioner of citywide operations for the New York City Parks Department. And I worked out of the Arsenal in Central Park, as well as an operation called Five Borough and Reynolds Island. And that's the real hands-on job and more fun, because you're out in the parks, you're out in the playgrounds. Every weekend you're doing what's called weekend commissioner and inspecting the sites and getting out there. And that's actually what led me to Fleet. Because, how did we clean the parks, right? It was these cleaning crews. How do you take care of the beaches? It's an overnight cleaning operation with equipment. They call them climbers and pruners, but, it's mostly forestry is mostly a cleaning operation. The garbage trucks that pick up the garbage. And that's, I realized in running operations for the Parks Department that Fleet had to be front and center, because Fleet was kind of the key to it all. And that eventually led me to a whole set of innovations at Parks. And Mayor Bloomberg appointed me in 2011. To be the city's first chief fleet officer, to kind of take many of the things that I had implemented at Parks on the operational side and bring them citywide to all the agencies, especially the three big ones: the police department, the fire department.
No, I have to say that the role in Parks, the role in Fleet, and the role of People and Planet United, you really have been focusing on planet and people. It really comes together when you're dealing with our parks, who are our parks for people. But they have to be receiving. So I really wanted to ask you about some of the programs you're up to. Where our fleet was when you took over, and there was a decision to sort of move to a sort of renewable fuels, electric vehicles. You've been in this role for quite a few years now. Where was it when you started? Where is it right now?
Well, we're a big vehicle fleet, right? And we use a lot of fuel. It used to be about 30 million gallons a year. It's actually down to 25 million. I guess that's part of our story, and we'll talk about that. Our trucks are everywhere. You can't go 2 blocks in New York City and not see a fire truck, a police car, a sanitation truck. And so those emissions, those tailpipes are also everywhere. And the services our city employees, who are terrific, perform, are essential, and we depend on them every day for our daily lives. But, we want to also do it in a way that minimizes as much as possible the environmental impacts. So, it's been a journey. We've been working on, we'll talk about the biofuels and the electric and the hybrids, even natural gas early on. I've been working on these things for really 30 years. But we've gotten to a real great place of achievement now. I mean, I'll throw out, just to get it going, a few of the things. We operate 5,500 electric vehicles now, the largest electric fleet in New York State, public or private. We operate another 4,400 hybrid vehicles. We do not use fossil fuel, except in a few very minor instances.
No fossil fuels.
We have replaced
wow.
On the diesel side, which 15 million gallons of our 25 million a year. That is all renewable diesel now. And basically, we are powering today. I'm listening to a fire truck outside my window, because you can't not hear them all the time if you live in New York. We power our fire trucks, our ambulances, our garbage trucks with a fuel that's made mostly from used cooking oil and waste animal fats called tallow. That is most of our feedstock. We are not getting crude oil and unearthing it from under the ground for 10,000 years and putting it in the atmosphere. We are using waste agricultural products that are renewable, right? We grow. There's a growing season, an eating season, a growing season, an eating season. And that's what we're powering our vehicles on, tremendously reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing air quality impacts, creating a more sustainable powering program. So we've made enormous progress. The largest electric fleet out there, largest electric charging network, 2,200 plus ports. Who says you can't establish electric charging in a place like New York City? I have a charging port all over every nook and cranny of this city. And the biggest biofuels program, all running in one.
A lot of people talk about the transition is going to cost. It's going to cost us a lot of money. And I think that if anyone knows how much it's costing, and you don't have to give an exact figure, of course, but I always say the cost of not making the transition may be heavier than the cost of making the transition. But you're in the midst of essentially transitioning an entire New York City fleet toward a carbon neutral environment within the next 10 years, and you're on your way. Could you give us a sense of what's involved economically? And you don't have to give us the numbers, but a sense of the calculations that you have to make. And when people sort of say, hey, Keith, can you tell us if we're on budget or not? You're the one who has to stand there with the facts and figures with your team. How does that all play out?
Well, we almost have to be on budget. Actually, the call I had before I got to spend with you was with our Office of Management Budget, our regular weekly call. We have to be on budget because you get allocated amount of money, and that's what you get to spend. That they're not giving you anything more after that. But here's what's interesting about these electrification and efficiency initiatives that are meant to be, we call them sustainability, but it's also efficiency. Most of our sustainable implementations in the fleet program are cost neutral or cost savings. In fact, a lot of them are quite listed in the city budget as what are called PEGs, programs to eliminate the gap, budget cuts. Why is that? Because when you buy an electric vehicle and you replace a gas vehicle, you save enormously on fuel costs. All right, electricity is cheaper than gas, and frankly, electric vehicles are dramatically more efficient than gas vehicles. I don't know if all your listeners know, but 70 to 80% of the energy you create in the combustion engine, when you kind of have a regular engine, is wasted as heat and exhaust. Right? If I bought 10 pizzas for us and then said, I got 10, but I'm going to throw 8 away and we'll just eat 2. You'd be like, what are you throwing?
Just tuning in, you're right on time for Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio. We're chatting with Dan Sheeran, General Manager for Healthcare and Life Sciences at Amazon Web Services. We're discussing how cloud-native tools are empowering the next wave of digital health transformation. Stay tuned. This episode is just getting started.
5 to 70% less maintenance, less repair. The biggest program we have in the city fleet is our repair program. We have 1,300 mechanics who are absolutely terrific and do an extraordinary job keeping this city running. It's the largest mechanical program in New York State, maybe in the whole East Coast. But we can reduce that maintenance burden through electric vehicles. We're also extending the lifespan by at least 2 years. So if you normally would replace a pickup truck or van in 10 years, we can replace it as electric in 12. So you're saving money. You're paying a little bit more upfront, but you're saving money over the lifetime. This is not a burden on costs. Not doing it is a burden on costs. On the renewable diesel side, we pay about 75 cents extra at this point. And the reason for that is we are the early adopter. We are about the only group that has brought renewable diesel in scale into the East Coast of the United States, actually really east of the Rocky Mountains. But if you go to California today, the 5th largest economy, they say, in the world, 60 to 70% of all diesel fuel sold in the state of California, public and private, this isn't just government stuff, this is everybody, is renewable diesel today, and the pricing is the same as regular diesel. And that's because they have a policy called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, creates essentially a carbon market. It's in place in California and Washington State and Oregon. New Mexico just passed it. There's a conversation, there are introductions in New York State, New Jersey, and Massachusetts looking to create it. I'm a supporter of that. This administration supports that. We think that would really help move us forward, especially as some of the mandates now are being pressed by the federal government. Advanced clean trucks, advanced clean cars, omnibus on diesel emissions, the EV tax credit, all in the crosshairs of this new federal budget. We think what California has done in the low carbon fuel standard could create cost parity. So the only one of these initiatives where we're a little bit of a cost plus right now is on the renewable diesel side. And I will tell you, we helped pay for it for the other initiatives. So we have so many other savings in the city fleet that we were able to make the argument that we would pay a little bit more to be the first early adopter on this cleaner diesel fuel. And if the state were to pursue a low carbon fuel standard, you would create a vibrant market. And 2-3 years from now, we wouldn't be paying an increment there. So you can do these things cost effectively. I'd argue that if you cared about nothing but the money side of it, you would be getting hybrid vehicles, you would be getting electric vehicles, maybe not in every instance. Some of the trucks are still very expensive, but in the medium duty, the light duty, you'd be doing this if you cared about nothing but costs. My wife and I just got our own personal electric vehicle. We do not do that because we were trying to check an ideological box or because someone ordered us in a mandate. We wanted it because it's a great car, because we'll never have to fix it. We've learned something out of it. Now, if your readers have not driven an electric car, go do that. They're great to drive. They're very powerful cars, maybe too powerful in some ways, got instant torque. And you'll never hit the brakes. One pedal driving is a remarkable thing. If I live 100 years, I would not expect to do a brake job on my new electric car because I almost never touch the brake.
Just tuning in, you're right on time for Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio. We are live with Keith Kerman, Chief Fleet Officer for New York City, on the intersection of sustainable fleet innovation, public health, and how cities are leading the charge towards a greener, safer future for all. Stay tuned. Keith has lots more to share.
I think that's so important to the public conversation right now. You said, look, this is not an ideological conversation. It's a practical conversation. We're saving money. We're reducing the wear and tear of the vehicles. Vehicles are lasting as much as 2 years longer, and the savings on one side of the enterprise covers the minimal costs of sort of like this renewable diesel fuel type aspect on the other side. I think we get wrapped up in the ideological often. We tend to look at this in terms of sort of a political viewpoint, and you've transcended politics in bringing this information to us. You just said it's practically positive to the people of New York City. Could you talk a little bit about when people realize, something, Keith is on track here. I mean, forget about this side of the conversation or that side of the conversation. It works. It's cleaner. The air is impacted by this. It's more effective and efficient. We can use our maintenance staff in different ways. So are you sometimes saying, hey, folks, let's not get into the political debate here. It's nothing to do with that. It's just the smart thing to do. How do you handle those conversations?
Well, first off, I've had the great honor to serve in senior capacities under 4 New York City mayors, starting with Mayor Giuliani to Mayor Bloomberg, Mayor de Blasio, and now Mayor Adams, crossing the entire political spectrum. And I've worked entirely in operations and fleet for that period. So, and what's interesting is so much of what we've done going back 30 years is all still in place. It isn't, we do a set of programs in one administration and then get rid of it and do, this is fleet operations and city service operations. There's tremendous continuity. In every administration, we argue what is smart, what will improve operations and services for the city, what will save on risk. And we're not here to talk about safety, but huge costs and implications from what safer vehicles, and what will be cleaner and better for the environment. And of course, enormous costs and implications to pollution. Sometimes they're in the healthcare side, not necessarily the fleet side, but we all know that they're there. And we hear a lot about efficiency these days, right? There's a whole debate about efficiency. Well, we just published a report, which you can get on our website, about the important role that electrification plays in efficiency, right? As I talked about earlier, batteries are just a way more efficient way to propel your transportation system, right? The combustion engine, give it its due. It created the modern world that we all inhabit, but it was never a particularly efficient way to push something forward. We have, through batteries, a more efficient way to do that. And it doesn't have to be electric. a plug-in hybrid electric, a hybrid electric vehicle where you don't have to do the charging infrastructure. You're just getting a more efficient
Right.
gas vehicle, really,
You've
right? A
also
hybrid
been
electric vehicle
instrumental
is really,
in renewable fuels. I know that you've been a champion of renewable fuels. Could you share with us the evaluation you make in making a decision to sort of convert to a renewable fuel?
Sure. And to go back to your other question, the purpose of my role, right? You don't get to run the city fleet of New York City and just focus on emissions, right? The core job here is to make sure that our police, fire, sanitation vehicles, 50 agencies, our school buses, which are 10,000 contracted units above the city, above the 29,000 we talk about, that they are available, that they are operating, that they are reliable 24 hours a day, every day of the year, right? These are your ambulances, these are your garbage trucks, these are your police cars, and your emergency service units. This is what you depend on in New York City to make sure we can get through the day. You don't get to say, well, I do emissions and whatever else. We have to make sure these vehicles, if we want to do an EV, that it is suitable for the task, right? And we have to look at all these operations, really hundreds of different businesses. And we say, and we evaluate, right? Can you do a hybrid here? What do it mean? Can this operation, we study it. We have something called the Fleet Office of Real-Time Tracking, a command center for vehicles, 29,000 vehicles. We're tracking them live as they move through the city. So I can look at how a vehicle is used in regular days and emergencies, over the weekends and nights, and I can see, is it suitable for an EV? Or maybe you do a hybrid, but you can't do an EV here. Or maybe you do biofuels here. I'll give you an example of the difference. We have about 2,200 garbage trucks, mostly at sanitation, but also at DOT, at parks, at night. About 400 of them do not plow in the winter. Those 400 we can do as EVs. We think that their day-to-day route can be captured with an electric vehicle and you charge overnight. But the others, we use renewable diesel. Why? Because at least today, there is not an electric vehicle on this planet that can do plowing operations reliably, right? So we're not going to try to electrify plow trucks if you can't do it. If the market isn't there, you can't do what you can't do. So that's where we're using 100% renewable diesel.
You have
Actually,
the
95%
territory you cover is so
5%
vast. I mean, you're coordinating with the fire department, the police department, the first responders, sanitation department, Department of Education. I mean, you're at the hub of all this. How many people are part of your core group? I mean, I have every time I speak with you, I sort of sense that you totally have your fingers on every element of this. I mean, you are so well versed in the information, the granular aspects of this. How many people are assisting you in making all this come together?
Well, there are 1,800 full-time people in the fleet program, the fleet servicing and operations program for the city of New York. 1,300 or so of those are auto mechanics. But then we have transportation coordinators, acquisition
So it's a pretty tight
specifications
group of
people,
people. It's
auto
not
parts
huge.
specialists. Well, it depends,
Well, but you just mentioned the
1,800,
vast
it
majority are
depends on how you.
responsible for the maintenance of the vehicles.
Oh, absolutely, right. And then we have about 80,000 dry operators. Some are part-time or occasional as needed, and then a lot are full-time. My executive group here is 40 people. So at DCAS, the kind of executive central team is 40 staff, but the whole program is 1,800. And look, we have a tremendously capable group of people. I have an extraordinary assistant commissioner, Brent Taylor, who's a longtime fleet professional, a 25-year extraordinary public servant, Sherry Lee, who runs the budget for this place, $1.3 billion in expenditure tied to fleet. Right? We're a town fleet, but we're a pretty big operation. We might buy as much as $500 to $600 million year. So it's a complicated operation. I've had the fortune to have a lot of tremendous staff who've been with me, a lot from parks. So a lot of my team from the Arsenal is sitting here. We sometimes joke it's called Arsenal South. They call the Arsenal in Central Park its headquarters. And
this has
so
been
a lot of them
the
are here with us.
fastest moving show ever, because you're just you're an encyclopedia of knowledge about this whole thing. I've got to ask you one final question. New York City is one of the most precious cities of the nation. I mean, some people actually, when they come to visit as visitors from Europe, they think it's the capital of the United States to some extent, but obviously it's not. It's not even the capital of New York State, but neither here nor there. Do other cities call you up and say, "Hey, Keith, Could you give me some advice? I mean, you're a collaborative person. You're working with countless departments. You've worked with 4 or 5 mayors. Do cities call you up and say, Keith, you got to help us out? Here's where we are. Does some of your week also spent as sort of like a guide, a mentor to other cities?
All the time. And so first I want to mention, I don't know if I mentioned it, in 2015, we committed to 50 by 25, 50% greenhouse gas reduction by 2025. Yes. You mentioned it earlier in your comments. We had a 3-part plan. We've talked about that. Renewable fuels, electrify everything you can as soon as you can, and then all these efficiencies, fleet efficiencies, hybrids, fleet reduction. And I do want to tell you that we will make 50 by 25. We have achieved 50 by 25. So how many organizations out there are making big environmental commitments, but then actually do the work and achieve them? And yes, we are pushing that very program, that 3-part program, far and wide. My commissioner, Louis Molina, and I were in Detroit on Tuesday, meeting with Michigan DOT and Michigan Economic Development, the City Hall of Detroit, and Ford, talking about these issues, how to move forward. We have collaborations with London every year, collaborations with Montreal, regular programs. We've been in Philadelphia. We've been at the Port Authority just in the last couple of weeks. So we think there's a program there today with these renewable fuels, and it's a domestic.
We are grateful to you. Thank you for joining us on this program, and thank you for everything you do on the behalf of the residents of New York City. We have a lot of gratitude to you and your team for making the city a clean city, a healthy city, and also for your influence on the nation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Greg. It's great to be with you.
And that wraps another powerful conversation here on Health Unabashed. And a big thank you to our global audience for tuning in, and to our special guest, Keith Kerman, for sharing how bold municipal leadership is reshaping urban transportation for health, safety, and sustainability. Keith reminds us that innovation isn't limited to the private sector. Cities like New York are providing the real-world impact happens when vision meets action. Health Unabashed streams live on Healthcare Now Radio Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m., 6:30 p.m., and 2:30 a.m. Eastern. That's 7:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. Pacific. Stay connected with Gil and me via @Gil_Bashe, and that's Bashe, and @GregMastersMPH, and that's Greg with 2 G's. Do tag your insights and feedback using the hashtag HealthUnabashed. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep raising your voice, and no apologies.